Fairy tales have always taught us to believe in the power of love at first sight, and Cinderella is no exception. The magical story of the young woman who, with the help of her fairy godmother, wins the heart of Prince Charming in a single night, is seen as the epitome of romance and triumph. But what if the prince's instant love wasn't as genuine as it seems? From the moment his eyes meet Cinderella's at the ball, the prince seems completely spellbound. He ignores dozens of noble suitors and directs his attention only to that mysterious girl in a stunning dress. Is this a sign of true passion, or could it be something more supernatural? The idea that Prince Charming might be under a spell sheds new light on the classic tale. After all, in a world where magic turns pumpkins into carriages and mice into coachmen, it wouldn't be too far-fetched to think that the fairy godmother went a step further and enchanted the prince to ensure Cinderella's happily ever after. Here's the intriguing question. How far does the morality of magic go? Is true love still true if it was sparked by an enchantment? From the moment Cinderella enters the ballroom, Prince Charming seems hypnotized. He completely ignores all other suitors, many of whom possess the status and beauty any king would be proud of. Instead, he focuses exclusively on Cinderella without hesitation, as if programmed to recognize her as the only person that matters in that room. This sudden obsession is a pattern we've seen before in fairy tales. In Sleeping Beauty, Prince Philip is guided by a magical song to Aurora. In The Little Mermaid, Ursula's spell almost forces Eric to fall in love with Vanessa. In both cases, magic plays a pivotal role in manipulating emotions and decisions. Could Cinderella's story follow the same formula, with the fairy godmother orchestrating the magic? If anyone could cast a spell on the prince, it would be the fairy godmother. Her goal is clear: to secure Cinderella's happy ending. Considering the rigid social context Cinderella lives in, the fairy godmother knew that marriage to the prince was the only way to free her from her stepmother's tyranny. But this intervention raises moral questions. Manipulating someone else's emotions, even with good intentions, is it justifiable? Maybe the fairy godmother judged that the chemistry between Cinderella and the prince needed a little nudge to happen. After all, she knew one magical night wasn't enough. The prince needed to feel an instant and irresistible connection. So she used her magic to ensure Cinderella was the star of the night, and of the prince's heart. After Cinderella disappears at midnight, the prince's behavior becomes even stranger. Instead of actively searching for his mysterious beloved, he delegates the task to his messengers. Even more peculiar is his obsession with the glass slipper. He decides that he will only marry the woman who fits that shoe perfectly, a decision that seems almost irrational. This fixation on the slipper might be a side effect of the spell. It's as if the magical object became an emotional anchor reinforcing the prince's attraction to Cinderella. After all, it's the slipper that symbolizes the magical night, not the young woman's personality or story. This wouldn't be the behavior of someone genuinely in love, but of someone under magical influence. If the prince was truly enchanted, Cinderella's happily ever after takes on a darker tone. The true love celebrated in fairy tales would merely be an illusion created by magic. This theory also challenges the idea that magic is always a benevolent force in tales. The fairy godmother, often seen as an altruistic figure, would in this case be a manipulator of free will. This leads us to a broader reflection. How acceptable is it to use magic to shape destiny? Cinderella's narrative becomes not only about triumph but also about the complexities of a love that might not be as genuine as it seems. Imagine that the spell cast on the prince isn't permanent. Over time, he might start questioning the feelings that led him to marry Cinderella. This scenario adds a layer of tension to that happy ending. Would the prince remain in love with her upon realizing his emotions might have been manipulated, or could true love blossom after the spell fades? This possibility suggests that Cinderella and the prince's marriage wouldn't be the end of the story but the beginning of a journey filled with emotional challenges and discoveries. In this context, the true happy ending would depend on both of them rebuilding their relationship based on real feelings, free from magical interference. The theory that Prince Charming was under a spell completely challenges Cinderella's traditional narrative. What once seemed like a tale of love at first sight becomes a story of magical manipulation, questionable choices, and a happily ever after that isn't as guaranteed as we imagined. The prince's sudden obsession, his fixation on the glass slipper, and the lack of emotional depth in his actions point to something greater: the influence of magic on his decisions. If the spell did exist, it casts a new light on the fairy godmother. Her benevolent image gives way to a morally ambiguous figure, willing to manipulate another person's free will to ensure her protégé's happy ending. This prompts a deeper reflection. Would true love be less valuable if it was initiated by magical intervention? Or was the fairy godmother merely creating the ideal conditions for love to flourish? Additionally, the possibility of the spell being temporary adds tension to the story. Would the love between the prince and Cinderella endure without the magic's influence? Or would it be merely an illusion that crumbles over time? This perspective turns their marriage into a starting point for a real relationship, where true feelings would need to be built. Finally, this theory invites us to question what a happy ending really means. In fairy tales, love is often idealized as the ultimate solution to all problems. But what if the true challenge isn't finding love, but sustaining it when the magical forces cease to act? From this perspective, Cinderella's story becomes less of a simple fable about romance and more of a reflection on choices, manipulation, and the role of magic in shaping our destinies. And what about you? What do you think of this theory? Is Cinderella's happily ever after as perfect as we've been told? Or does this story hide a much more complex dilemma? Share your opinion and thoughts. After all, revisiting fairy tales is always a fascinating journey to rethink our beliefs about love and magic.